So hello, everybody. So I'm Stacey. I am the head of marketing at Edition. I am a marketing person. I am not a finance person. So I am just here to facilitate and make sure that everything runs smoothly today. So we have our two expert CFOs with us. We have Graham and Karim, and they are each going to be taking us through some of their wisdom looking at financial metrics that actually matter when it comes to e-commerce businesses. So we really want this to be an interactive session. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat that we have on LinkedIn Live. The webinar is going to be split into two parts. We have the 4 C's of e-commerce, which is going to be Karim, and then we also have the financial metrics to track, which Graham is going to take us through. Okay, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. I'm going to hand it straight over to Karim.
All right. Thank you very much, Stacey. And I'm going to start off, and what I'm going to do, welcome everyone to the webinar. I'm going to start off and take you through this e-commerce model that I use in order to split out different components of e-commerce and be able to identify which parts of the components are working, which ones are not, which ones you want to spend time working on. And this framework starts off from an old framework, which is anyone that's done any marketing theory knows about, is the 4 Ps of marketing. This is very old. This is like back from the 60s. And this was developed by a legendary marketer, Philip Coulter, who made a book called Marketing Management. And what it is the 4 Ps are product, price, place, promotion. And these come down to effectively, first of all, P, product. What is your product or service and what makes it different and stand out? What is the price that you're going to charge for your product? And what tier are you going to operate? Are you a luxury brand, a mid-tier? Are you going to be a premium brand? What is your pricing strategy? And then where are you going to sell your product or service? Which distribution channel you're going to use? Are you going to be having retail, e-commerce? If it's e-commerce, are you doing Amazon? Are you doing Etsy, your own website? That kind of thing. And then lastly, how are you going to promote your product? Yeah, how are you going to communicate, advertise your product and service? How are you going to convince someone, persuade someone to buy your product or service? And that's the basis of what then the method that I use, which is what we call the 4 Cs of e-commerce. And if we move on to the next slide, so the 4 Cs of e-commerce, and Stacey? Yeah, Stacey, yeah, there we go. We're just moving on the slides. So the 4 Cs of e-commerce are catch, connect, close, and continue. So similarly to the 4 Ps, what are the 4 Cs? So 4 Cs is first of all catch. How are we going to catch a user and get them to visit our online shop? Once we reel someone in, what we want to do is connect with them. We're going to connect with them on our shop and make them feel comfortable, make them trust the shop that they're visiting and connect with them. And once we've connected with them, we want to close. So it's actually making the sale, whether it's a product or service. It could be that they buy something or they sign up to through an email or they book a call, for example, is a close. But then once you close, then it's the continue. So once they've already bought your product or service, to get them to come back afterwards and come back and repeat purchase after that. These are the 4 Cs of e-commerce, and we're going to go through them individually and then also look at the metrics that we use and show some examples of what good looks like and what the metrics are behind a good example. So if we move on and look at catch. So first job is you're going to throw your fishing hook and you're going to hook people in. And how are you going to hook people in? Really, there's 2 ways to get people, if we think, into your online shop. The direct method and the indirect method. Direct method is when they actually click, let's say, on an ad or a search or something that they're looking online, and they click on something and directly takes them to your online shop. So obviously a Google search, a keyword, a Facebook ad, a TikTok video, something that takes them directly onto your website. So you catch them and you get them to your shop. Then there's the indirect method. This could be something like traditional media. You put an ad on TV, paper, influencers, PR, someone talks about your product, word of mouth, a friend tells you, or you have retail presence, and then that factors into online. This requires someone to actually go and search for your website and go onto your shop rather than the direct method. And the quality and reach of each of these direct and direct methods are directly proportional to the effectiveness of your catch. So how good you are in these direct or indirect methods directly impacts the performance of your catch. And also what you want to do is you don't want to catch everyone, absolutely everyone. Of course, the more the better, but you want to have quality traffic that goes into your site. You spend hundreds of thousands on a TV ad, you get millions onto your site, but nobody buys, it's a complete waste of money. So what you want to do is quality catch. And if we move on, the way to measure how you're doing is look at your ad impressions, how many people you're reaching, what's your click-through rate on those ads, how many people are like your ad and then want to know more. If you're doing a Google search, what's it costing you per click? And then ultimately, you want to track your visitors over time. Are you growing your traffic onto your website? And then if we move on, and the next one, once we've just to show some examples of catch, these are some examples of catch. And what you want to look at in terms of catch is eye-catching visuals. These are people are scrolling effectively, so you want to stop them in their scrolling, and you want them to catch their eye. Once you catch their eye, you want to have a nice heading, super flavor, something like that, something that compelling that makes them want to know more. And you want to have as well a strong call to action, which these are some examples that we have. Yeah, so once we've caught them, we move on to the next step, which is connect. And so once the catch is done, what you want to do is you want to convince someone to buy your product or service. And so they've landed onto your homepage or landing page. So it's all about what's the quality of your homepage? Does it spark interest to view more? Is it easy to navigate? Are you presenting your brand in the best possible way? Is it easy to scroll through different pages? Can you see clearly what are the product offerings? Do you lead with your benefits, first of all, get people to buy into your benefits? And then what is the reason to believe behind those benefits, features of your product? And of course, reviews, certifications, all that helps to give people confidence and connecting. And then, of course, the quality of your images, your videos to explain your product on your website makes it easy. And then is there a clear call to action? At the end of the day, you want people to buy, add to cart, or sign up to a newsletter, sign up for email, or book in a call. And if we move on, so how we measure this, and what we want to do is we want to see the time that people are spending. So the more time they spend, the more engaging they are with your brand or your shop. Where are they navigating? Are they spending the time on the homepage and then they bounce? Are they on the product page? Are they on the cart page? Where's the bounce rate and where is it happening? So you have to measure over time how many people, percentage of people are bouncing, and how can you reduce your bounce rate and where it's happening. And you can use software to track where it is that they are actually dropping on your site so you can see what you need to fix. Right, so what are some examples of Connect and what we want to do in terms of Connect? And these are actually web versions. Very important is you have to have the web, the online, the phone version. At 70 to 80% of your traffic is on mobile. So if your mobile site doesn't look good, you're going to have people bouncing because it's not easy to follow. All these examples I'm showing here are mobile versions of websites. So you have clear proposition, engaging visuals, minimal distractions, so you reduce the clutter. You have to have trust signals, some nice reviews, certifications, optimize for mobile like this has, fast loading speed as well. If the website takes a long time to load, people will bounce. And so you've done everything, you've done your job, you've caught them in, you've connected with them, you've showed them that you've got a good quality. Now it's time to close. Now it's time to make the sale. So when you're on the sale starts on the product page. So they're thinking about, should I add it to cart? Is it easy to follow the descriptions? The price now plays a factor here. Is the price reasonable for what you're offering? Is it a good value proposition? Do they buy into the reviews in the product page? And then it's time to add to cart button. And this is where the real close happens, is once they click on add to cart, is where a lot of the drop-offs happen. So if we move on, what we've got to think of here is once they click into add to cart, they get to the checkout page. And is the form easy to fill in? Are the delivery costs explained clearly? Are there any hidden fees that have been added in? Are you offering free returns, refunds? Is the checkout optimized for mobile as well? So once you're on the mobile, is it easy to scroll and it's not out of proportion? And do you offer all the different payment options? And actually, it's very interesting to see if you go on to the next slide, It's actually the top reasons for abandoned checkouts. About 70% on average, people drop off at the checkout point. It's very easy to add things to the basket. Anybody can just add things to the basket. Very different to part with your hard-earned money. So to actually do the purchase. So then you add to the basket, you want to see maybe, well, let me see a bit more. How much does it cost me? If all of a sudden they have unexpected shipping costs, easily the number one reason why people drop off. Forced account creation as well. If you don't let them check out as guests, everyone knows how difficult, how annoying it gets. You have to create a password and captchas and this and that. People drop off a lot. If it's a complicated checkout process, the total cost again is upfront is not clear. The website crashes, obviously. But then also if deliveries, for example, if you're offering delivery in 5 to 10 days, maybe they expect it tomorrow, that would be another reason for them to drop off. The payment options as well, not all of them being available. And payment options could be obvious ones like Visa, MasterCard, Apple Pay. But if you go internationally, some markets, for example, Middle East, they are very big on cash on delivery. So if you don't offer that, people will bounce, people will drop. And these are the top reasons for abandoned checkout. And so now that you've passed all these tests, this is an example of a simple close. You offer very easy. If you offer things like Google Pay, Apple Pay, automatically picks up your address. You don't have to fill in any forms. If you have the Shop app from Shopify, you want to keep it simple. You want to avoid as many touch points as possible so that you can actually close the sale. And there we go. And then, so the sale is done, well done. Now you think the job is done, but actually, no, it's 4 C's, it's not 3 C's. And the last C is continue. It's with the way online, the cost that it takes to get someone onto your website and to buy your product, sometimes you actually rely on repeat purchase to make it work. And the continue starts the minute the customer makes the sale. So once the sale is made, are you offering clear confirmation emails? Are you communicating with the customer? Do they understand when the delivery is going to come? The experience from now on will factor in whether you get a repeat purchase or not. So if we look at some of the metrics for this one, we click through. You want to have clear confirmation by email. What did they buy and how much did they pay for it? You've got clear shipping instructions, shipping notifications as well to let them know to be at home when the shipment is going to happen. And actually, are you going to deliver as per what you promised? So if you said 48 hours, did you deliver in 48 hours? If it goes delayed beyond that, there is a chance then they might think, oh, I'm not going to buy again. It needs to be, it's so competitive out there. There's so many choices when it comes to online shopping. If you're not on point on everything, people can just go off and find someone else that will deliver as per their expectations. And also when they receive the product, the packaging, the unwrapping experience, if they paid a premium for it, they expect a premium experience, and that will help towards that continue and the next sale. And in terms of continue, all that I've said really doesn't matter. All depends at the end on the second moment of truth. It's when the customer actually has the product and tries it, and whatever it is that they've bought, they enjoy the experience. That is absolutely critical. So if they don't enjoy the product, then it doesn't matter what you do from now on, they're not going to buy from you again. So the key is you've done your homework beforehand and you've actually got a value product proposition that consumers like, that they enjoy, and that when they receive it, they love the product, they tell their friends and family about it. That's the key to have continue. Without that, everything I've said before doesn't matter. And no matter how many times you go after the customer again, the key is the second moment of truth. So if you click through, ways to do continue as well is subscriptions, and this can start even before the close. If you're offering subscriptions, you already got someone in for a second, third, fourth, fifth sale. So that's the easiest way to do continue. And then as well, there is email marketing, of course, CRM. So if you've got new products, you've got new launches, events, occasions like Black Friday, Christmas, Valentine's, all these are occasions where you can actually send email marketing. And then lastly as well, new channels. So you might sell online, but somebody then might find you in a retail store and then they buy your product as well. That's another way to continue the journey of the customers. They might buy it in another channel. And these are just some examples of continue. You've got a subscription where when you sign up, you give a discount to subscribe. So you incentivize the continue already from this point. Or you send an email saying, for example, National this day, National Cheese Day, whatever it is, send an email, and then you get people to buy into your product again. So what are the metrics that we want to follow in this catch, connect, close, continue? In the catch, we're looking for is click-through rates, target of about 2-3%, cost per clicks, target about $1 to $3. And then you also want to check over time, how many impressions are you getting, how much are you spending, how many visitors are you getting over time? And when it comes to connect, how much are they spending on your website, session durations, longer sessions indicate better engagement, and the bounce rates that you want to happen, and where does it happen, and how is your bounce rate over time? And then close, the critical one, conversion rate. How many people who visit your shop are converting and buying? And then cart abandonment rate. Anything below 70% would probably be a good metric. There's a high cart abandonment rate is very big. And then also you've got cart retargeting to go after that. Net promoter score as well. So people are, once they close, are they promoting your product? And then lastly, continue. Customer repeat rate. Averages across all industries, 15-20%. Anything better than that, you'd be above average in terms of customer repeat rate. And so let's put all that together. And how does that look in terms of an example and go from catch all the way to continue? Say, for example, you were to spend £500 on ads. With those £500 of ads, you generate 20,000 impressions. And that gives you, you got a click-through rate on your impressions of 2%. You get 400 visitors. This is a tough market. Unfortunately, 200 people will just bounce. It just happens. 50% of people on the homepage, something they don't like, gone. And then they look at your product page, you get another 176 people bounce, they're gone. And then you get people adding to cart. And then you're in the close stage. And in the close stage, you're left with 24 users, and they've added an item to your cart. So sounds good. They add item to the cart, but this is where it's a high percentage drop out for whatever reason, what I explained earlier. Something they don't like, shipping cost, something happens, they drop out. 16 users drop out. You're left with 8 users who make a purchase of an average order value of £30. And these users, therefore, what your job is now to deliver the product to 8 users. So that's where the continue starts. Deliver the product, deliver it on time. And then if you do that, you get some repeat purchases. And then you can get 2 users, make a repeat purchase. And the good thing about the repeat purchase is normally the repeat purchase is higher than the first purchase in terms of basket size, because they've already tried your product, they like it, they trust you, so they feel more comfortable buying more. And therefore, whereas if they do just one purchase, you have an average order value of 30. With this, your customer lifetime value goes from 30 to 43. Yes. And we've got now a click-through conversion rate of 2%, but the cost per acquisition in this example is £62. So still too high, £62 versus lifetime value of 43. It's not working out, right? So what we've done here is we've seen an example that's not working. So what we want to do is we go back and we say, what can we improve on catch, connect, close, and continue? So what we do is we generate the same amount of impressions. We work on improving those ads. We get better quality ads, better visuals, better call to action, better headline, improves the click-through rate from 2 to 3%. What does that mean? We now go from 400 visitors, we have 600 visitors. So out of those 600 visitors, in this case, 300 bounce, and then 258 bounce on the product page as well. And then we end up in the cart. Move on. Now we have 42 users have added an item to the cart. Spending the same amount of money, we have more users adding items to the cart because we improved the click-through rate. And then 24 people abandon the cart. We still get 18 people making an average order value, and we incentivize higher average order value. We get £35. That means now we've got 18 users which we deliver the product. And there, in these cases, we get 6 users who make a repeat purchase for £50. And therefore the lifetime value in this case goes from the previous example of 43 to 52. And with the conversion rate increased from 2% to 3%, the cost of acquisition goes down from 62 to 28. And in this case, we spent £28 to acquire a customer and we got 52 back. So this way it works. And spending the same amount of money. So it's about identifying, okay, is it catch that's not working? Is it connect? Is it close? Is it all of them? Or where do I want to focus? At the end of the day, you can't do everything all at the same time. So you have to identify where is it that you want to spend your time? Where is it I want to improve my click-through rate? No, actually, I want to improve my conversion. I want to get more people in. That's what you want. I want to increase the basket size. I want to work on repeat purchase. And that's how the ultimate lifetime cycle works and how you can get more profitable in your online business and your shop. And that is the 4 C's of online e-commerce. Thank you everyone for listening. Any questions you can ask now if you have something that comes to mind immediately, or you can leave the questions till the end. If there are no questions, I'll then pass it on to Graham. Thank you.
Second, Karim, just to see if there are any questions. That was really great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really. Go on, Stace.
Sorry, Greg. There's about a 15-second delay on our live stream. So let's just let the questions and then we can ask questions at the end. I'll consolidate them all in the Q&A section at the end.
Perfect. That sounds good. Yeah, thanks for that, Karim. Really useful framework, actually, the 4 C's. I find that a very nice way of easily sort of laying out the buyer journey and then aligning metrics to it, which is obviously, as finance people, we always want to optimize everything, don't we? So optimizing each stage of the journey there is how we achieve the perfect world. Obviously, we're never going to achieve the perfect world, but we always try, don't we? So we want to try and optimize every stage of that. I think that's really great. And that metric, I'll talk about this in a sec as well, but that acquisition cost versus lifetime value metric, which is kind of almost the number one metric for a growing business, definitely in e-commerce, in most businesses really, is really key. So you really want to make sure that the lifetime value of your customer is ideally at least 3 times. For a younger business, maybe it's 2 times the cost of acquiring a customer. And for someone who's really well optimized, perhaps that's even higher, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes the higher the ratio, the less effective. But yeah, I thought it was a really good way of laying it out. So I'm just going to talk through, guys, some financial metrics. So Karim's touched on the definitely financial metrics too, but more around the funnel, if you like, and the buyer journey and the performance marketing side of things. I'm just going to talk about some financial metrics and how we can maybe think about incorporating them into the financial reporting as well. Stacey, if you go to the next slide, it'd be great. Perfect. So the way that I sort of think about spend and, if you like, segmenting reporting, it's not just spend, it's also income as well, but I like to think about investment in the business in sort of 3 buckets. And every pound you spend falls into one of the 3, to be honest with you. So the first one is product and operations. And this is really around, okay, so you've acquired the customer, they've bought something from you. Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Right, now how efficient are we at actually delivering that product or service to the customer? So great marketing, great job on sales, perfect. We've closed the customer. Now we actually need to make some money when we deliver it to the customer. So this is the key metric in any business across the whole world, to be honest with you. There isn't a single business that this metric isn't good for, which is gross profit margin, which is very simply how much are you selling your product or service for? Product in this case, as an e-commerce founder, how much are you selling your product for, and what is it costing you to build that product, to create that product, to get it shipped, etc. So all of the costs around the manufacturing, the packaging, the shipping costs from wherever you haven't had it made to your warehouse, all of those costs go into your cost of goods sold, which form part of your gross margin. Now, typically when we look at a business and we're trying to improve a business, this is one of the areas where there's a huge amount of value to be had. So there's lots of wastage because in an e-commerce business, most of your costs are either in product costs or marketing. Those are the two areas really where there's lots of value. So really optimizing those direct costs and think about your product costs is really key. And then aside from that, staff operations and discretionary spend, which is less important, less big, if you like, for a lot of e-commerce businesses, because most of e-commerce businesses these days are run quite light, asset light in terms of staff and discretionary spend outside of marketing and product. So but having some metrics around that is still really important, and managing that discretionary spend well just keeps your operating margin really healthy. The next bucket I just want to talk about is growth costs. So I mentioned this briefly just a second ago. So sales, marketing, and product dev. What is it costing us to acquire a customer? So some metrics I've got here are things like opportunity to win ratio, which is very similar to some of the metrics that Karim mentioned as well on sort of the checkout. Is when someone lands, how many of those people are we actually winning? How's the conversion looking? It's all about conversion, right? And optimizing that conversion funnel. Really key metric. The one that I love as well, which I think kind of never lies really if we have the assumptions right, is the acquisition cost to lifetime value, CAC to LTV, which you probably hear lots of people talk about. It's a ratio of how much is it costing me to acquire a customer versus what the lifetime value of the customer is. Now, if that is a positive metric, so 2 to or more than 1 to 1, ideally 3 to 1 or higher, then you're really building a really good, sustainable, growing business. So as long as you can continue to fund your business, to fund the growth, fund the marketing, fund the working capital, you'll continue to grow and have a successful business. So really important ratio. As are things like cost per lead. So how much is it costing me to get people to go to my site and add something to my cart? And aside from that as well, obviously, you've got to keep an eye on product development too, right? So lots of e-commerce businesses, as you know, we're launching a product, we get it out there, we sell it, but at the same time, we have to be innovative as well and launch new products. And making sure that we are managing that investment in a really good way, I think is really important. So a lot of that might be R&D, research and development, but some of it may be, we know what we want to make, we're going to go ahead and actually create that new product. Making sure that that's fully budgeted and you've got a project spend tracker on product development is really important. I've seen quite a lot of businesses that have one really good product and then they go to build and create some new products and they end up overspending on the new products, and it actually kind of can destroy this great thing that you've built already because you had this great first product which worked really well and you've gone and spent all the profit on this new product which didn't work out so well. So I think making sure you're keeping an eye on the project spend tracking on new products is really important. So those metrics really are measuring the return on investment of marketing, which is key. So they're less micro to some of the metrics that Karim talked about, which is around optimizing people on your website, etc., and more when we're talking about perhaps in the boardroom, financial reporting wise, these are the kind of metrics we would look at. And the third one, which is not always relevant for e-commerce, but is absolutely for some, especially as the business matures and you start to get much bigger and maybe bring some manufacturing in-house, for example, is capital investment as well. So perhaps you buying a new machine to manufacture your product, for example. Okay, great. So we're going to bring manufacturing in-house. What's the payback period? Is it actually a good business case? How does that, in that payback period, obviously you'll have a business case model that ideally would bring in how much is it going to cost me to actually build this manufacturing plant? How much do I save versus outsourcing the manufacturing? And when do I get my money back? What's the net present value, etc.? So net present value of future cash flows is effectively what is that worth over time, me investing in this project. So if I bring my manufacturing in-house, how much additional shareholder value is that going to create? And that's really what net present value of future cash flows is. And then there's another way of looking at it as well, which is the annual return on investment. So if I invest £10,000 in a new machine, how much additional profit does that generate? and therefore what's my return on investment. So knowing those things, I think, is just really important. Now, I'm not going into loads of detail about how to calculate them or how it works, but whenever you're thinking about product or operation, so shipping a product to a customer, it's really about optimizing your margin there. That's really important. Acquiring a customer, really important to make sure that you're not overspending on that, and that's efficient, because that's the quickest way to go out of business, is spend too much money on acquiring customers. And then if you are doing anything slightly bigger around capital investment, know that it's a good business case, it's got a payback period, and it's going to increase shareholder value ultimately. Those are the three areas really within any business that I look at, and I think that's a good way of looking at these things, and make sure that you're just conscious of them, and making sure you're always trying to optimize them. If you fly blind, sometimes you can kind of cause a bit of a problem for yourself, and before you know it, you've run out of cash. Anyway, thanks for that. Thanks, Stace. Next one. So the 5 metrics that will tell whether your business is healthy, not just busy. Your gross margin, so I touched on this previously before, how much profit is left after direct costs. So that's something you definitely need in your board pack. Operating costs, though this can be expressed as a percentage of sales, what it takes to keep the lights on. So running the business outside of shipping the product, what's that as a percentage of revenue? Now, some of that's fixed, so that's more difficult to manage. But as long as it's something which is ultimately resulting in a strong operating profit or EBITDA, then I think that's a good baseline. This is a massive one. I'm going to talk about this in a bit more detail. Inventory days. So how long is your inventory or stock sat in your warehouse or in your office for a smaller e-commerce business? How long is that stock sat there before it's sold? Because that's cash tied up that we could be doing something else with. Really, really key metric. Debtor days too. Now, of course, if you're purely D2C, then and you're purely selling online, purely e-commerce, then this is less of a consideration because you get your cash fairly quickly. It might take a few days through Stripe or any of the other sort of payment gateways you're using, but fairly quick, to be honest with you. But if you're selling wholesale, then that's a completely different story, and that's a consideration that really needs thoughtful planning and a really important one to manage, which all leads into really the inventory and the debtors into the cash gap. So cash gap really is your working capital cycle. So how long is cash tied up in your working capital before it is freed up again for reinvestment? And that's a really, really important thing that I talk about a lot. And we work on a lot with a lot of our clients as well, in addition. We're always looking to optimize their cash flow. Lots of growing businesses that are just bewildered because they're profitable, their revenue's growing, things are going really well, but they don't have any cash whatsoever. And this is the cash gap. And it's a balance which is, always tricky, but if it's managed well, and like I said, if you're very thoughtful about it, there are ways of managing this. So I think we've got a slide next which explains this in a bit more detail. So I just want to talk you through one example of this. So again, this is a business it's a consumer product business with actually selling wholesale. There is still a cash gap if you're selling purely online as well. But in this example, it's a wholesale business. So first thing is 0 days. You bought the goods from your supplier. The goods are received in the warehouse. The assumption here is that they're actually giving us credit, right? So we get the goods. 30 days later, this is often not the case for a younger business or a small e-commerce business. They often have to pay up front. But anyway, in this case, 30 days later, a payment is made to a supplier. So that's sort of best case scenario. Great. Got the goods, got 30 days. 45 days later, the customer actually buys some of that inventory. So maybe it's taken you a little while to repackage it or organize it, get ship it to the right warehouse, etc. And then you've actually got to acquire the customer too. So 45 days later, the customer actually orders something and the goods are shipped. And again, this is a wholesale order. And then often there may be a 60-day period then until you actually receive your cash from the customer. So you can see here, there's quite a big cash flow gap. So from you paying your supplier 30 days after delivery, all the way to you getting the payment from your customer 75 days later in this case, because they've paid late. 60-day terms where they've actually paid late. So the cash flow gap there is huge. So even if you're profitable and your business is growing really, really well, you can see how that is a massive drain on your cash flow and just makes it absolutely impossible to continue to trade. And then oftentimes it's if this isn't managed properly and sort of facilities aren't in place to manage this, you can't grow anymore. And you actually end up shrinking because there's no cash available to acquire those next batch of customers. Or perhaps there's no inventory. You haven't got any stock anymore because you've sold it all and you haven't got the cash yet to buy the new inventory, or there's a lead time. So optimizing all of these things is really important. So optimizing when you pay your suppliers, when the inventory is coming in, when you're shipping to your customers, and when your customers pay you. Really important. And the lifeblood really of any e-commerce business and consumer goods business. In addition, what we do with a lot of customers is, now it depends when the stage of the customer, of course. Often earlier stage e-commerce businesses will probably raise some equity, so that really helps with this cash flow gap. So that helps them buy their inventory up front. It helps them cover any inventory day lag, etc., and any payment terms from customers. But that only goes so far. And at some point, once that equity is deployed and it's tied up in your working capital, then you need more. All right, it's a constant. If you're growing, you always need more. And so what we put in place for a lot of customers at Edition are things like stock financing facilities. So a bank or a lender will give you credit to buy your stock. So you're not having to ship out your own cash, your own equity, your hard-earned money on paying your suppliers for the stock. The bank says we'll do that for you, of course, for free, for a margin and for some interest. But that really helps. And then at the other end, you can also finance, if you are selling wholesale, those invoices to those customers too. So that 60, 75 day lag, you can actually get financing from an invoice financing provider to cover that cycle as well. So what you end up with is, if you've got a working capital set up with debt facilities on both sides, and again, this is where it really needs to be managed well, you can continue to scale because you're utilizing the facilities that are in place rather than having to use equity all the time. So I think, and I feel quite strongly about this for consumer goods businesses and brands. If you really, really want to scale, honestly, I think the only way and the best way, in my opinion, if the business is actually proven and is profitable, is doing it with debt. Doing it with equity is kind of expensive because you're just raising equity for it to be sat on your balance sheet and working capital. So really, we want to use debt for that sort of stuff. That's a scary word, of course, but that's where a really good, experienced CFO can come in handy. So if you are at the point where you're thinking about putting debt into your business to manage your working capital and optimize this, make sure you've got a really strong finance person in place who's going to help you manage that, to make sure that you're not overdrawing on the facility, that you've got a really solid cash flow forecast that shows that you can repay the debts on time, etc. And of course, keeping on top of that growth cycle as well and customer acquisition. So if you are going to do this, definitely get a CFO in place, or somebody who understands this stuff, really strong senior accountant or finance manager. Somebody needs to be in place to manage that stuff. But if you want to see how we manage this Edition with our customers, we'd love to show you. And we're offering a free one-on-one financial workshop for all webinar attendees. So if you want to get in touch and say, do you know what, I'm seeing this problem either with optimizing my funnel, my website, or with managing your working capital and your cash flow, we'd love to talk to you and love to help you if we can. And yeah, we're offering a free workshop. So please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you on that.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, so I have some questions
Great.
to ask you to put you on the spot. So, okay, the first one is, what is a healthy gross profit margin for an e-commerce brand?
Okay, good.
Who
Kareem,
wants
do
to
you want to
take?
take this one? Do you want to take this one first, and I'll
Yeah.
chip in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a good question. Yeah, it's what you want to have in terms of gross margin, and it's critical to have a high gross margin. The reason for that is once you take off your gross margin, you put in the cost of your goods. What you've got left needs to pay for all the salaries, needs to pay for the other marketing, needs to pay for rent, needs to pay for interest. You've got all the other, if you're going to buy inventory, in the end, you need to have cash as well. But it's key to have that gross margin to be able to fund all these things. And really, if you're looking at, it varies a lot, by industry. In general, like consumer goods, for example, you want to have high 50, 60%, 70% margins. That's what you want to aspire to be able to fund everything else that goes with it. And that's what makes the business as healthy as possible. And if there's one thing that you can improve that will impact your business, is an improvement in gross margin. Yeah.
Huge.
Okay, then
Yeah,
I've got a
agree.
follow-up question actually that I can see has come off the back of that, is how can you improve the gross profit margin? Do you have any advice on how, like ways that you can improve your gross profit margins?
Yeah. Graham, I'll let you take that one.
Oh yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, and to add to Kareem's point, yeah, 50 plus really gross margin, I suppose. But anything under 50% is a little bit of a red flag, I suppose, at this stage for an e-commerce business, because it means that you're not really retaining enough of the sale price, really discounting too much. But sometimes it's good if it's managed well. How can you improve your gross margin? So think about your manufacturing costs, your product costs, how much it's costing to get your product built. Luckily we're in a environment where there's a lot of producers out there across the world, really. It's competitive, so I would just say always keep on top of that. Always see what's out there in terms of third-party manufacturers, and how you can get your price down. Make sure every year you're doing a little bit of a review, and tendering the business out to a few manufacturers you ideally got relationships with, and then you can just start to slowly chip away at the price. That's really important. And think about, again, this is where kind of supply chain management really comes in. Think about your shipping costs as well. How much does it cost you to get the product from the manufacturer, which is often in China or the Far East, to Europe or the US? How much is it costing to get it there? And how can I optimize that? And you can usually optimize that with things like shipping higher volumes, being more organized and thoughtful around your sales so that you don't need to use air freight and those sorts of things. All those things really tie into gross profit. And then making, this is hard, of course, less discounting. I mean, how do you do that? Well, actually, you can do that through really good marketing and increasing the value of your product and almost the brand value as well, so that people aren't actually looking for a discount. They just want to buy your thing. So those are the main areas, really: discounting, product costs, and shipping costs. Anything else I've missed there, Kareem, you think?
Yeah, no, I think related to the discount, I mean, always the price that you charge is something that's a very easy way to improve gross margin. Of course, very hard to do,
Yeah,
to increase prices, but every year you should review it. You don't want to give your product away either. And there are always, you'd be surprised how much people are willing to pay for your product. And sometimes you have to price. And if your price and you've optimized your cost as much as possible and your gross margin is below that 50 mark, that means there's something going on. People are not willing to pay. So there's something that you need to fundamentally look into your product to see why they're not willing to pay that higher price, so you can achieve that 50% plus.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome. So
agreed.
let's just recap. Anything under 50% is a red flag.
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll
I've
get
got
loads of e-commerce founders now saying like, "Oh, but mine's at 45. My business is going really well." Yeah, but there's always the exception.
okay, another question has come through from a swimwear brand. So if you have a seasonal product, do you have any advice on how to manage cash flow on off-season months?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So managing cash flow in off-season months. I think that if I take a step back from that, obviously the first thing that we want every business to do and when you're selling physical products is even more important because of that cash gap, etc., is having that longer term cash flow forecast. So ideally, we always say make sure you've always got a 12-month rolling forecast. So you're always looking 12 months ahead in your cash flow. And so if you know what seasonality looks like in your business, I'm guessing it's not many sales in the winter, tons of sales in the summer. Make sure you plan for that in your budget and in your rolling forecast as well. So always have that 12-month rolling forecast, and make sure that you don't overspend in the summer, so that you're not spending all of your free cash on marketing, etc. So that when you have got to the end of summer, you don't have enough to get through the winter. It wasn't actually. It was a similar seasonal business I worked with once, which was actually in travel and hospitality. We had a similar thing where people tend to book all of their travel in the winter and in the spring, and in the summer you didn't really have that many people buying holidays or booking from you, and so that always caused a bit of a problem. The only way we could manage that really was looking ahead. We had to look ahead always and say, how much cash do we need next winter? Okay, we're in the middle of summer and things are going really well, but we're going to have to make sure we keep this in reserve to get through the winter. And so in summary, you just have to make sure you've got a really good, reliable cash flow forecast. And when we talk about financial planning and forecasting, we always want to go with sort of a semi-conservative plan. So everyone creates a plan which is everything goes really well, and that's great. But the problem is if you base your cash flow off your plan where everything goes really well, it's probably not going to work out that way, and you're going to be left with a bit of a black hole. So make sure that you are planning conservatively when it comes to cash flow. Anything to add to that, Karim?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. When I think about seasonal businesses, I always think back to Toys R Us, which unfortunately, went bust. And the reason for that was that they only made money in Q4, in Christmas. And I think what happened, you look at the Q4, they're making so much money. All the other quarters, they're losing money. And you say maybe it pays off, but actually, they spend 9 months planning for it. So actually, you put it all together, and it's all those months are actually also part of Christmas. And it's finding a way so that if you are seasonal, you want to still try and be profitable in those quarters where you're not. Have temporary staff, whatever you can do to lower the costs. Make sure that you're profitable. Don't rely on, I will lose money in these quarters and then we'll make it back in that quarter. I think it's something that's very difficult to overcome.
Definitely. I'll actually to add something to that as well. Obviously, the ultimate thing you want to try and do, if not always possible, is to flatten your seasonality by launching new products. So what kind of product development can I do which is going to help me in the winter? So obviously, if you're purely swimwear, that's pretty difficult, isn't it? But there are other markets you could look at. So when it's winter here, it's somewhere else. So we have that. So we could try and flatten the seasonality that way, perhaps.
Do you recommend running seasonal sales to clear stock in the off season?
Definitely, yeah. That's a great shout, Stacey. Yeah, there's the marketing person coming in. Yeah, definitely clearing the stock is always important. You don't really want to go into winter in that case with stock or much stock. You want to try and sell as much as you can in the summer, and then maybe in the shoulder period after summer, just before you get into the winter, have a sale to get rid of everything. Then you've got cash in the bank then, haven't you, to help you through the winter. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, I've got just 2 more questions. So if cash flow is an issue, Graham, you were speaking about the cash flow gap. How do you know when to raise and when to kind of bootstrap and just tighten up operations?
Okay, good question. So how do you know when to raise versus bootstrap and tighten up operations? I think if your business is growing, unfortunately in this sector, you're never going to have any cash. That sounds horrible. It sounds awful, doesn't it? But your business is growing, you're just not going to have any money, basically. Yeah. It's all going to be tied up in working capital or marketing, something, right? So if your business is growing, I think raising, but I do believe that using debt is a really good way of doing that. So if you've got a lot of confidence in your business and you know that you've got kind of reliable sales, that side of the business is working, definitely explore some debt options on funding the inventory side of things and funding the other side, the invoice financing. And if that's not possible, it's not always possible, because early stage businesses are often loss making, and so they can't get debt if it's too early. Then unfortunately you are having to turn to equity, really. There aren't that many e-commerce businesses or businesses like this in consumer goods that have managed to scale without raising any money, because it's actually just the numbers just don't work. So if the business is going well and you don't have any cash, that's when you need to raise. If you're not selling and you don't have any cash, that's because you've got a product problem or a marketing problem. But if you're selling well, you've got a good product and your marketing's working, you need to raise, definitely. Hopefully that answers the question. Long-winded way, but hopefully it does.
Okay, and then a final question, which, Graham, I think you might be a bit biased on this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Okay, how can I get better visibility into these metrics that you've discussed? Could you kind of explain what a good financial tech stack looks like?
Yeah, of course. I'll go first, and Karim, you can add to it. I think the first thing is, for all of this really, is you need to make sure this is the boring stuff, but the bookkeeping has to be right. So without good bookkeeping, timely bookkeeping, you're not going to be able to run all of the reporting that we've just discussed here on top. So make sure that if you're in e-commerce, you're definitely selling online. You're using some kind of well-known platform probably to do that. They integrate really well with bookkeeping systems, Addition being one of them, of course, but there's others too. Your Xeros, your QuickBooks, Sage, whatever. All your systems will integrate with those systems. Your operational and commercial systems will integrate with those systems, so make sure that's set up well. And I do believe strongly that we can automate like 80-90% of this stuff. So set it up in a way that's truly automated so that you always know your numbers. And then you can either use a really nice reporting tool like Fathom, for example, or there's others like Futurely, and there's other reporting systems that sort of sit on top of your accounting data. I would recommend using one of those as well, unless you want to use Excel, which is totally fine as well. But you need to then pull that bookkeeping data out, and then you need to make sense of it in some way, and create some analysis and create those metrics from that data. So that's the sort of the stack I would recommend, is have your systems feeding into an accounting system like Addition, like Xero, and then have your reporting coming off the back of that, using either Excel, which is totally fine, or a cloud-based reporting tool like Fathom or Futurely.
Yeah, no, excellent. Now the only thing I was going to add was, I mean, luckily for this type of business, the 4Cs are actually quite easy to get. If you were like in a operating retail environment or you're doing TV ads, it's a lot harder. But with this kind of 4Cs, it's very easy. If you're on Amazon or you're on Shopify, these platforms, all these metrics are there on the home page. You log in, you immediately see your conversion rate, your click-through rates, all these time visitors, all these are available. So as long as you've got the technologies available now, so you can see all these metrics, and there are tools, maybe put everything together in one, and be able to see them. It's the key to be able to, if you want to work on improving ultimately your long-term customer value and reduce your cost per acquisition. Those are the metrics you need to follow.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously we talk about the tech stack and everything, which is great, and automation, which is really important. So automated bookkeeping, definitely key. But having a person as well, the people side of things, someone who actually can help you make sense of those numbers, really important. Because we can sit there forever churning out numbers and analysis and numbers on the spreadsheet and stuff. But if we don't really know what they mean or how to influence them, how to improve our gross margin, how to manage the cash flow gap, it's difficult, really. So I would recommend pairing whatever tech stack we've got with a competent person as well. That's right.
That's all we've got time for today. Thank you both so much for your time. And yeah, we look forward to the next webinar.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Stace. Thanks, Karim.
Yes.
Thanks everyone
Thank
for
you,
joining, and hopefully see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.